This is a discussion, comparison, and demonstration of the differences between the first, second, and third, and fourth generation Toyota automatic transaxles used in their hybrid electric vehicles. The first and second generation Prius used the P111 and P112 transaxles, and I've got a separate YouTube video on the second generation Prius transaxle. The first generation was very similar, but the second one was beefed up a little bit more and had some additional bearings. But right here on this bench, I've got some of the components of the hybrid transaxle from a second generation Prius, and then on the back side here I have the same components from the third generation Prius transaxle, Highlander transaxle, Camry transaxle. They're all the same design. There's different gear ratios and different sizes of these components, but overall there's really just the design, the original design that had a power split device, planetary gear set, and then the second design, second, third, fourth, and so on, that not only contained the planetary gear set for power split, but it also contained an additional gear set for motor speed gear reduction for the MG1 motor. So what I'd like to do is show you the differences and compare the first design without the motor speed reduction planetary gear set and to the second and later designs with the planetary motor speed reduction gear set. So right here on the first and second generation transaxles for the Prius, we've got a clutch disc style damper. We've got a pressure plate that keeps that permanently applied to what looks like a manual transmission flywheel that bolts right to the crankshaft. And so this acts as a damper for the engine starting and stopping, the rapid changes in electric motor speeds and so on. That's the first generation design, first and second generation Prius. The third generation that's used in the Highlander, the Camry, the third generation Prius, and so on, has the same clutch plate and pressure plate, but it's all in one assembly here. We still have the damper springs, the clutch disc. We can still see the material inside there, but it's permanently squished with the pressure plate installed all in one unit right here. And then the flywheel is very much like the first and second generations, bolts right to the crankshaft, but obviously a little bit larger. This particular transaxle is the P310 out of a 2008 Highlander or Lexus RX hybrid. And so if you recall, the purpose of the clutch damper here in the hybrid system is to drive the planet carrier. And so on the first and second generation transaxles for the Prius, we have the input shaft to the transaxle that splines right into the clutch disc. In the third design transaxle, we have the same thing. It just splines right into the clutch disc also. So you can see some similarities there. The third design has an oil pump drive and a little teeny oil pump that is driven anytime the engine rotates, which is only when the engine's running, or if your battery is fully charged and you're decelerating going down a hill. We don't have the engine running, but it's rotating, and that acts as an oil pump. On the first design, we also had an oil pump drive shaft that connected right here on the back of the Planet carrier and had its own same style oil pump on the back of the drive there. Okay, now let me get these pieces out of the way. So the next thing I want to compare is motor generator number 1. Here's motor generator number 1 from first and second generation Prius Transaxles that has the power split device planetary gear set, and motor generator 1 is connected to a sun gear that's one of 3 pieces of a planetary gear set. We have to have a sun gear, we have to have the Planet carrier with the Planet pinions, and we have to have a ring gear. But I wanted to show you a comparison of MG1 in the third generation transaxle design that has the power split device but also the motor speed reduction planetary gear set. So it actually is going to have 2 planetary gear sets, but the function of MG1, motor generator number 1, is the same. It acts as the starter motor for the engine. It turns the sun gear just the same as the previous designs. You can see it's a little bit thicker. Its stator, of course, is a little bit thicker that goes with it, and they are very close to the same outside diameter. So we've got the motor generator number 1, which is some very strong rotating magnets that acts as the alternator for the charging system for the high voltage battery and the starter motor to start the internal combustion engine as necessary. So let me slide these back out of the way here. Now I'm going to bring in the motor generator number 2 pieces. So for the first and second generation Prius, this is motor generator number 2, considerably larger, stronger, more powerful than motor generator number 1. So MG1, motor generator 1, this is MG2, motor generator 2. And the job of MG2 is to rotate this sun gear, or I'm sorry, this ring gear. It's not a sun gear. Sun gear is right here. So we'll put that ring gear right there. It splines on. These teeth right here spline to another gear, and on the first and second generation Prius, there's actually a chain drive that goes to the final drive idler gear, and then the final drive looks like a timing chain off of an engine. And so when this electric motor, this MG2 motor turns, then the vehicle will move. Well, the third generation transaxle also has an MG2, and let me make room for that. I'll get rid of this first generation MG1. You gotta watch it. These are very strong magnets. All right, here's our MG2 from the 2006 and above Highlander, 2007 and above Camry, the 2010 and above Priuses all have a little bit smaller MG2. And that includes the Prius C, the Prius V, the Prius plug-in hybrid vehicle. So the job of the MG2, if you remember, on the first and second generation Prius was to drive the ring gear. And then the MG1 drove the sun gear, and the internal combustion engine drove the Planet carrier. MG2 in this newer design transaxle also drives a ring gear, but it has an additional planetary gear set. So we already had on MG1 back here, we already had on MG1 a sun gear, but we've got another sun gear right here that's going to go on MG2. So this third design of transaxle has two planetary gear sets. The original design one, which is the power split device to allow the engine torque and the electric motor torque from MG2 and MG1 to help propel the vehicle and charge the battery and start the engine. This third design, with the additional motor speed reduction gear set, is planetary gear set. We've got a sun gear, we've got planet carriers, or a planet carrier with 5 planetary pinions right here. So I'm going to put that on there. And then we have, let me get rid of MG2 from the first design for a moment. Then we've got the ring gear that's part of the motor speed reduction gear set. But notice it is directly connected to the ring gear for the power split device. So let me get the first design transaxle totally off of the bench here. So we have the internal combustion engine with the torque damper that is going to drive the Planet carrier for the power split device portion of the transaxle. And then MG1, just like with the first and second generation Priuses, drives the sun gear right here. So we've got a sun gear, we've got a ring gear, and we've got a planet gear that's part of the power split device. But then if we turn that over, on the other side of this same component, we've got another ring gear. So we've got the ring gear, we've got the planet carrier, we've got the sun gear. That's all part of what we call the motor speed reduction gear set. And so I'm going to put that together. So it's going to sit right on there like that. Okay, so we've got MG2 driving a ring gear right here on the third generation, third design transaxle. That does the exact same thing as the first design, MG2. It drives a ring gear. So MG2 driving a ring gear that is part of the 3 pieces of the planetary gear set for the power split device. The only difference here, besides their physical size, is that on the original design, when the MG2 motor made 1 rotation, the ring gear also made 1 rotation. On the second design, or I'm sorry, on the third design transaxle, now, since we've got that additional motor speed reduction planetary gear set in there, 1 turn of the MG2 does not equal 1 turn of the ring gear for the power split device. Instead, it's going to take 2.5 2.478, so almost 2.5 turns of the MG2 to give us 1 turn of the ring gear here. Now that speeds up MG2, which also gives us torque multiplication of about 2.5 to 1. So this is a more powerful transaxle in the 3rd generation Prius, in the Highlander, in the Camry. It has more torque because of the additional gear reduction here. But if you recall, this is called a motor speed reduction planetary gear set. It's not reducing the motor speed of MG2 down here. It actually ends up reducing the motor speed of MG1. And one of the big problems with the first and 2nd generation Priuses is that when you got up to a certain speed, the MG1, which was typically 37 to 40 miles an hour, the MG1 electric motor would be spinning at its maximum speed, and we would be forced to turn the engine on to reduce the speed of the MG1 motor. In this design, the MG1 motor is considerably slowed down by this additional gear set. As a matter of fact, we used to, for 1 turn of the original 1st and 2nd designs, we would get 2.6 turns of the MG1 for 1 turn of the MG2. Out on this design, we get just a little over 1 turn, 1.05 turns of MG1 for 1 turn of MG2, which means we can go to higher vehicle speeds, like on the Prius plug-in hybrid, which I read it can go clear up to 61 miles an hour now without having to have the engine come on. And I suspect that's because of preventing overspeed of MG2 more so than MG1. All right, so let me get the 1st and 2nd generation parts totally out of here. So now we're just back to the 3 pieces of a regular planetary gear set. We've got the sun gear that's hooked to MG1, which is our starter motor and our alternator. We've got the planet carrier with its pinions that hooks to the internal combustion engine through this torque damper and clutch. And then we've got MG2 right here that turns the ring gear, but not with a direct drive anymore like the 1st and 2nd generation transaxles, but with a 2.478 to 1 gear reduction. So now I'm going to put this whole thing together, and then we'll look at the gear ratios. So we're going to take the planet carrier, and it's going to fit just right down inside of the ring gear for the power split device. So down it goes right there. And then I've got, let me slide this over, tip this down. MG1 right here with the sun gear is going to go right up the middle of that planet carrier and mesh with the planet pinion gears. And so now we've got MG1, we've got the power split device planetary gear set, we have the motor speed reduction planetary gear set, and then MG2. And by the way, on this 3rd design transaxle and above, Toyota got rid of the chain drive like they had on the 1st and 2nd generation Prius and went to a gear drive. So anytime this gear rotates, it turns an idler gear that turns the final drive and propels the vehicle. Which, by the way, there are several different final drive gear ratios depending on whether it's the Prius C, which has, I think, the tallest gear ratio. I think it's like a 3.1 to 1 gear ratio. The Prius plug-in hybrid has like a 3.2 to 1 gear ratio. The Prius V and the regular Prius, the Camry, the 1st and 2nd generation, 3rd generation Highlanders, and so on, all have different gear ratios. But these gear ratios are pretty much the same. As a matter of fact, the power split device gear ratios have been the same since 2001 on the original Prius. So all Toyota hybrids use the same gear ratio on the power split device planetary gear set. There's two gear ratios for the motor speed reduction gear set. They're all the same except for the new, there's two new transaxles. There's a P410 and a P510 transaxle that come in the Prius. Let's see, the P410 comes in the Prius plug-in hybrid, and the P510 comes in the Prius C. And it has, instead of one rotation of MG2 giving us 1.05 rotations of MG1, it's one rotation of MG2 gives us 0.9 rotations of MG1, so it slows it down even more, which is better for higher speed battery only operation. Okay, let me grab some boards here, and we will set this transaxle up and run you through some gear ratios. Got a bearing that goes on the end here. So this is very heavy. There we go. All right. I'm also going to take the clutch disc, clutch damper off of the flywheel and put it on the input shaft of the Planet Carrier, and this will represent the engine, the speed of the engine. This is our MG1, our starter alternator, our motor generator, and this is MG2 that propels the vehicle. And so it's laid out very much the same as the first and second generation Prius, but remember, once again, this is third generation and above Prius. This is the Highlander, this is the Camry, this is everything later from Toyota up through 2012 and 13 that I've verified so far. And the big advantage here is this motor speed reduction gear set lets this motor, MG2, spin faster through a gear reduction, so it takes less work and gives us more torque because it's torque multiplication through the gear reduction. And it also slows down MG2, which was a limiting factor, or MG1 over here, which is a limiting factor in maximum vehicle speed on battery power only. Okay, I've got some yellow paint marks here. You can see a yellow mark right here and a yellow mark right here. There's also a yellow mark on the damper for the for the internal combustion engine. Now, one thing that's different about this transaxle is that in order for the motor speed reduction gear set to work, these lugs right here are actually splined to the case. And so, although they're rotating right here in my mock-up, these lugs do not rotate at all. So I'm just going to take and lock them in place with a pair of locking pliers and prevent them from rotating during our demonstration here. Okay. Now, when we first start the vehicle, or not start the vehicle, but first power up the vehicle, you hop in and hit the power button. The internal combustion engine is off, so the Planet Carrier for the power split device will not rotate. And if you put it in reverse and you want to back up, we will just simply turn the electric motor, MG2, one direction to back us up. you put it in drive and you want to move forward, then we'll run the motor the other way. But notice that as we're driving straight, not straight, but driving forward or backwards, watch the paint mark on MG2 versus MG1. Remember, on the first and second generation Priuses, that transaxle, one turn of MG2 gave us 2.6 turns of MG1. Now watch how many turns we get. So as we're accelerating, MG2 starts to rotate. Here comes MG2 around to one full circle, and notice MG1 is just a little over one full rotation. And that's a 1.05 to 1 gear reduction, or overdrive actually, through the motor reduction gear set and the power split device gear set. So as we're driving down the road, MG1 right here can spin as fast as it's limited to, which is upwards of 12,000 RPM, 12 to 14,000 I believe. Notice that MG1 isn't spinning much faster. It really would have been spinning faster on the earlier first and second generation transaxles, 2.6 times as fast. The gear is rotating, which turns eventually turns our final drive gear set and propels the vehicle. So when we get up to a certain speed where we want to limit the speed of MG1, because it is overdriven just a little bit, then we will exert a force on MG1 to make it rotate just a little bit faster. And what that will do is, notice with MG2 turning, MG2 and MG1 turning just a little bit faster, now the internal combustion engine crankshaft is spinning, and then we get our engine up to its speed, and we can have these two be the same. We can have the MG2 going faster than the internal combustion engine, slower than the internal combustion engine. We can vary the speed of the internal combustion engine to vary the speed of the MG1 motor generator. The rattling noise you're hearing is a loose spring inside of this damper over here. But anyway, for driving down the road, we can have the engine off, MG2 propel the vehicle. MG1 does not really get overspeed until a considerably higher RPM. Considerably higher vehicle speed. If we need it to spin faster to charge the high voltage battery more, we can start the internal combustion engine by turning it faster with the electromagnetic field of the stator. And on the Prius plug-in hybrid, it's the same design. It's my understanding that it just runs on the lithium-ion battery pack until it's depleted, and then it switches to the regular nickel metal hydride batteries that are still in the back in the normal location. So the transaxle doesn't know any different as far as which battery source is propelling it. The gear ratio is just a little bit different, so that we can go clear up to 61 miles an hour on battery power only before the engine has to come on for overspeed reasons, most likely of the MG2 electric motor. So this has been a review, comparison, and discussion of the differences between the two basic types of hybrid electric transaxles that Toyota has produced. There are the ones that have just the planetary gear set for the power split between the engine, MG2 and MG1. So the first and second generation Priuses only. And then all other Toyota hybrids, not counting Lexuses, but just the Toyotas, have an additional motor speed reduction gear set that actually speeds up MG2 but slows down MG1, because it was the one that was overspeeding anyway when you drove down the road. And then these are just a little bit smaller, more compact, they're balanced better and have a higher RPM range. The previous first and second generation Priuses, these motors were limited to around 6,500 RPM. Now these are somewhere in the range of 12 to 14,000 RPM, which gives us more torque and higher vehicle speeds on battery power only.